Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and I want to first thank the American Acupuncture Council for inviting me to do this series on Chinese herbal medicine. And last time I spoke about why I'm so sold on classical Chinese medicine in herbal medicine and sort of defined that to mean working with the formulas from the Shanghan Lun and the Jingui Yalui. And today I would like to sort of express some of the principles that I talked about last time with focusing on the formula Guizhitang. And this is such a useful formula. It's an inexpensive formula, easy to take formula. And the way we learn about it in our kind of typical TCM education is as a formula that will dispel wind cold. And we usually think of it as a formula to use for coming down with a cold or what we might call an external influence or an EPI. And what I'd like to do is describe how useful it is beyond just the common cold. Because Guizhitang is a formula that I use all the time in my practice for a wide variety of disorders. It's also a very small formula, so it's easily modifiable. And actually, there are many formulas in the Shanghan Lun that are based on Guizhitang. So hopefully, besides my main goal is to get people excited about studying classical formulas and working with them. But I also have a goal today of having the listeners be able to go home and think like, oh, I can use this formula, that you could use it next week for something you may not have thought to use it for. So first I'd like to describe how I see Guizhitang working. And last time I talked about the physiology of the Shanghan Lun that I think is sort of encoded into the Shanghan Lun, and that it's really about being right with time. And there's this kind of circular movement of heaven going around us while we're here on the earth, and the same circular movement is going on in our bodies. And so Guizhitang is one of the first formulas, I think the first formula to be mentioned in the Shanghan Lun in the Taiyang section. So understanding a little bit about Taiyang, it's this steaming up movement that goes from the middle warmer up to the surface of the body. And right after the Taiyang movement, it's kind of going up like the sun rising, it hits noon, and now it starts going down. And that downward movement is the beginning of the Yangming conformation. So when our Taiyang is functioning well, it has this really nice steaming up. And if you think about what steam is, it's yang within yin. So when you have steam, you have this kind of fire that's inside of water. And that fire and water are so mixed that it's actually steam. It's this water that rises up because of the fire that's inside of it. And that's what Taiyang does. It has this steam that goes up and out all the way to the surface of our body. And that steam sort of creates a nice ozone layer of warmth and protection. And when it functions well, we sweat normally. We have a nice, comfortable body temperature. And what happens in a Guizhitang pattern is, we usually think of it as like an invasion of wind cold or an invasion of wind. But I'd like to suggest thinking of it a little bit differently. That what happens in a Guizhitang pattern is that movement of steam going up to the surface of the body, it resolves too quickly. And so that fire and water separate before they've really reached all the way to the surface of our body. So what do you get from this separation that we also would call a yin wei disharmony, meaning the wei, that's the warmth inside, should be nice and inside the yin so that it brings it all the way up to the surface, but instead they separate. So you get sweating as the yin droplets lose their relationship with yang. They come out as sweating. And the yang that's lost its relationship with the yin, we get feverishness or flushing up. And that's what the yin wei disharmony is. In a way, it's kind of like a premature ejaculation, that you want it to take as long as this before it resolves, but instead it resolves too quickly. And that becomes pathological. So when we give Guizhitang, we're supplementing the warmth and the fluid in the middle warmer, and we're slowing down that process so that that steam rises and makes it all the way to the surface of the body. And in fact, a Guizhitang pattern can actually treat premature ejaculation. So we can explain premature ejaculation with the Guizhitang pattern because it's a leaking pattern. It's coming out of right relationship. So I said that the Guizhitang comes from the middle warmer, and you look at the ingredients of Guizhitang, we have gansao, shengjiang, these supplement and warm the spleen. We have dazao, which replenishes the nutrition in the spleen. So we've got this kind of fire inside of nice juicy herbs. And that starts that steaming process in the spleen and stomach. Now, dazao also enriches the blood, and so does baishao. So what I'd like to show is that the Guizhitang formula, it supplements the middle in a warm way, and it also supplements the blood. And that the warmth in the middle and the good quality warm blood is what then is the foundation for the harmonized yin and wei to come all the way up and out to the surface. So really the Guizhitang is a supplementing formula, supplementing the spleen and also supplementing the blood. And from that replenishment, it then supports that consolidation of the exterior of the body. So by giving Guizhitang, we're not just getting rid of a wind pathogen. Really, it's a healthy body knows how to get rid of a wind pathogen. So rather than just getting rid of the wind pathogen, we're restoring this function of the body to have really nice harmonized yin and wei. So I want to talk first about this flushing up that happens in a Guizhitang pattern and what that can look like. It can look like nausea and vomiting. If that flushing up affects the stomach, then you can have nausea and retching. And that's why Zhang Zhongjing put Guizhitang as the first formula in the pregnancy chapter of the Jingui Yalei for retching in early pregnancy. So that's one little gem I would like to give you, is to really think about Guizhitang as a formula that can treat nausea and vomiting in early pregnancy. And it does it, that the reason that there's the vomiting is because of the yin wei disharmony. And by putting that wei back into the yin, then it's not flushing up anymore. It's physiologically rising to the top of the body. So that's one thing that we can treat with Guizhitang, and it's right in there in the Jingui Yalei. The other thing I want to mention is that when the yin and wei separate from each other, it really means that the surface of our body instead of getting that nice firm ozone layer, that separation means that the surface of our body is too open. In the Shanghanlun, it says aversion to wind. And in my opinion, the symptoms that are mentioned in the Shanghanlun are both literal and symbolic. So the wind can mean that you have an aversion to just too much going on. In other words, you get overwhelmed really easily and you feel really hypersensitive. So imagine a patient who comes in, and let's say it's a woman, and you can see that she has blood deficiency. You can see from her complexion, from her tongue, maybe from your abdominal diagnosis, and you know she's got blood deficiency. And at the same time, she tends to be a little bit cold. And then premenstrually, she becomes very sensitive. We usually think of premenstrual syndrome as wanting to move the liver qi. But many of our patients don't actually fit that pattern, and they don't benefit from formulas like Xiaoyaosan or Shuganwan, something like that. There are many of our patients who come in, and the experience they have premenstrually is they become hypersensitive. They feel very, very vulnerable. And if you question them, one thing I like to ask is, do you generally flush when you have emotions? Like if you get embarrassed or if you have to speak in front of a crowd, do you flush easily? Do you sweat easily? In other words, that kind of person, their yin wei tends to separate. And many of my patients have been really helped with Guizhitang for PMS because of this. So what the Guizhitang then does is it supplements the blood, it nourishes the spleen, and it harmonizes the yin wei, and it really creates a sort of ozone layer of protection on the exterior of the body. So people don't feel so open and so vulnerable, and they can handle more. In the premenstrual time, many women just feel like, I can't handle anything. Someone looks at me the wrong way and I just start crying. And so Guizhitang is really, really good for that. We can think of that also for perimenopause or menopausal types of symptoms, which can have the same kind of experience for people. So we can see that this range of Guizhitang is really broad. There are also lots of modifications of Guizhitang that expand its usefulness in the clinic. A lot of these modifications are mentioned in the Shanghanlun. So, for example, a really favorite modification for me is a formula that's called Guizhi Jia Xiaoyao Tang. So it's Guizhi Tang, but the Xiaoyao is doubled. So Zhang Zhongjing is telling us, like, you can actually use more Xiaoyao if you want to, and so it's just Guizhi Tang, but you're using more Xiaoyao. So what happens to this formula that harmonizes the yin and wei if you add more Xiaoyao? And there's a couple of things that this formula is so useful for. So often I'm increasing the Xiaoyao. So what does the Xiaoyao do? And here I'm talking about Baishao. So the Xiaoyao is a blood nourishing herb, and one of the main indicators for me that I might want to double the Xiaoyao is with abdominal diagnosis. So with abdominal diagnosis, if I find that the rectus abdominis from under the ribs down to the navel are very tight, for me, that's almost always a Bai Xiao indication. And so in that case, I will add more Bai Xiao. The other thing that often goes along with this abdominal finding is, and it's so common, and it will go with a lot of these PMS kinds of women that I was talking about, is neck and shoulder tension. And we know that the bladder channel and the small intestine channel, they are on the trapezius and up the neck. And Bai Xiao really nourishes the muscles, especially when we have Bai Xiao with Gansao, like we do in Guizhi That becomes Xiaoyao Gansao Tong, which is for relaxing spastic muscles. And where are those muscles most likely to get really tense? In a Guizhi pattern, it's going to be the Taiyang channels and the upper body, because there's that flushing up called nobose in Japanese, this when we talk about it in terms of abdominal diagnosis. So there's flushing up, so it's going to affect the upper body, and then it's affecting the Taiyang channels of the trapezius and neck. So very often people will say, yes, I carry so much tension in my neck and upper back. It's always tight and painful. For me, that's an indicator for adding increased Bai Xiao to Guizhi. Very, very common. The other indicator for increasing the Bai Xiao is related to the fact that Bai Xiao is also bitter and it's cool. And Bai Xiao, when I'm going bitter, because I'm putting my hand down this way, because the bitter flavor descends in the body. And Bai Xiao is cool, so it's very good for opening up the Yang Ming and treating constipation. So it treats constipation both because it's very lightly purgative, but also because it relaxes muscles. When muscles relax, it's not just that, it's not like a muscle relaxant that makes all the muscles all soggy and soft. The way that Bai Xiao works to help the muscles, it helps muscles do what they're supposed to do. So it actually helps normal peristalsis while stopping cramping. So another indication for adding Bai Xiao is if that person that you're seeing that feels so vulnerable and sweats easily and flushes, if they also tend to get constipation, it can increase the Bai Xiao, or abdominal pain. So in the Shanghan Lun, that's what it's for. Add by the Guizhi Jia Xiaoyao Tong is for abdominal pain. So that kind of cramping can cause constipation. It can also cause abdominal pain. So that's a modification of Guizhi. So easy and easy to remember because it just makes so much sense. Another modification that's really listed just right after this Guizhi Jia Xiaoyao Tong is if the constipation has gone on for more than 3 days, so it's really blocked in there, so what happens when you're constipated is that it sort of sits in there and gets drier and drier and drier, and then it just makes the constipation worse. So if you want to give a flush just to break that cycle, in other words, it's a short-term treatment, but you want that flush to be gentle, you want it to be kind of body temperature. Guizhi is sort of body temperature. Then you have Guizhi plus Dahuang, little bit of Dahuang. And it's a short term just to kind of give the body kind of like an enema, except it's going in from the other direction, just to flush that out. And often that formula would be followed by Gui Zhi Jia Xiao Yao Tong. So I hope this is just a little 20-minute talk, and there are lots of other modifications of Guizhitong that are sort of equally as elegant and useful. My hope is that in this short little talk that at least I've given you a sense of how Guizhitong can work for chronic illnesses and illnesses that have nothing to do with catching a cold. Uh, and, just maybe inspired some people to get excited about classical formulas and studying them because it's such a beautiful way to work with our patients. And it's beautiful in large part because it's so effective. So I would like to also let people know that I'm the founder of the White Pine Circle, which is an organization that promotes teachings such as these, and it's uh, really just a wonderful membership organization. So I'd just like to encourage you to check that out, whitepincircle.org, where there's lots of teachings just like this, if this excited you. I also teach a 2-year graduate mentorship program where we just go through all of these formulas in a way that discusses them relative to these principles of classical formulas. You can find out about that at whitepineinstitute.org. That's listed right here. And then finally, I would like to again really thank the American Acupuncture Council. This is such a cool thing that they do, offering short teachings just for us to get to know each other and all the wonderful things that are happening in the world of Chinese medicine. And I really appreciate their service to acupuncturists. And I'd also just like to mention that the next talk is going to be Matt Kellison and Brian Lau. So I hope that you are able to attend that one as well. And I just really appreciate your attention to the things that I love so much. So thank you very much.